The operator of more than a dozen mental health facilities across Massachusetts and two of its former executives have reached a record-setting $25 million settlement with the Attorney General over claims that many of the company's staff were unqualified and not licensed to provide the treatment they were giving. And it only came to light because a former employee, Christine Martino Fleming, filed a federal whistleblower lawsuit. She worked for the company from 2008 to 2014 and witnessed what she said was a pattern of South Bay Community Services fraudulently billing MassHealth, that's the state's Medicaid program, for low-income residents for these so-called services. In 2018, AG Maura Healey joined the suit, which did result in the settlement. It does not include any admission of wrongdoing by the company, but afterwards, Healey released a statement saying it's vital that people who need mental health services receive treatment from qualified individuals. We took action against these defendants for leaving thousands of MassHealth patients with unlicensed and unsupervised care, while MassHealth paid millions of dollars for fraudulent services. We'll go after bad actors who jeopardize people's health and well-being to make a profit. I'm joined now by the whistleblower herself, that's Christine Martino Fleming, a former staff development and training coordinator at South Bay Community Services, along with Caitlin Silhan. She's one of the attorneys from Waters & Krause, LLP. Caitlin, Christine, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim.
Christine,
thanks for having us.
Pleasure. Let me start with you for a second. Before you went public with these concerns, did you speak to supervisors, people above you, to bring this to their attention and seek a fix?
Absolutely. I brought it to my direct supervisor, who was the CEO of South Bay, and I started there. And for 2 years, I raised it to the CEO of South Bay, the CEO of CIS. I brought it to an HIG board member. I brought it to the chief compliance officer.
And what'd they say? What'd they say? What kind of response did you get from these people?
Well, at first, for some people, I got no response. But from some people, it was more, yeah, I know it should be, but, you know, this is the way that mental health centers do it. And that's what I got.
Did some or most of them, Christine, know before you even said it that they had unlicensed and in some cases unqualified people providing care to their clients and billing for these services? Did they know this?
I can't imagine they didn't know it. And the CEO is a licensed psychologist. There's no way he would have known it.
You know, Christine, staying with you for one more minute, we've learned, a lot of us, in recent times, particularly with that Facebook whistleblower testifying before Congress, being a whistleblower can be a scary kind of thing. Did you have second thoughts or first thoughts before you decided to go public with all this?
Not really, because I had been doing this for so long, blowing the whistle internally, that I just felt it was the right thing to do.
So, Caitlin, what kind of protections do people like Christine have under the law, and are they real? Meaning, I know you'll explain what the law is, but it seems to me as an outsider that those legal protections often don't protect these people.
Sure. So under the Federal False Claims Act and the Massachusetts False Claims Act, whistleblowers like Christine are protected from retaliation in their employment. But you're right, this is often something that is only a fix after the fact. They're only entitled to damages, back pay, those kinds of measures, you know, after they file a suit. And by that time, things can have changed drastically. They can have lost their jobs, you know, faced other adverse consequences for blowing the whistle.
You know, Caitlin, staying with you for a minute, I know $25 million, according to the Attorney General, is a record, and I know she negotiated the settlement. But, you know, it's impossible to do the math, but I've read that they had 30 to 35,000 clients a year, and it seems to me that $25 million is probably not disgorging, for lack of a better expression, all the money they made perpetrating this fraud. Based on what you know, is that a fair assumption that they haven't been fined an amount equal to that which they defrauded the state for?
Well, the settlement doesn't represent all of the money that they were paid by Mass Health during the relevant time period. That's true. We didn't allege, the Commonwealth didn't allege that every single claim for payment was false, that it shouldn't have been paid. But you're right. This is not the amount that we would have sought from a jury. It's a settlement that represents a compromise among the parties.
And I want to make clear, it's still largest. I'm not belittling it at all. I'm just trying to put it in some context. Christine, how widespread were these conditions? Meaning, how many, I don't mean precise number, but was it a significant percentage of the people providing services who were unlicensed and unqualified, or just a handful?
I believe the number was somewhere around like 65, 70% of clinicians who are working there were unlicensed and not supervised by somebody licensed.
Well, we talked a minute ago about your supervisors and whether they knew. Did the service providers themselves, who didn't have the appropriate licensure or qualifications, did they know that they essentially were participating in the defrauding of the state and the taxpayers of the state and federal government? Did they know they shouldn't be doing that which they were doing?
Well, first I want to say that counselors in general in this field really want to make change, and they're really good people, and they want to help whenever they can. So they get into this field, many of them are looking to become licensed, and so they're working at South Bay. They're hoping to get supervision. They were told they were going to be getting supervision, and they didn't. And at this point, they're already with their clients. They're already trying to help. And not to mention, these are new graduates in the field, and they've been told over and over again, it was part of the culture at South Bay, that as long as somebody at the top is licensed, you're fine.
Caitlin, I know that considering I don't have to negotiate with these kinds of people, I'm probably far less charitable about some settlements than I should be. Again, I celebrate the fact that there was this kind of fine and how large it was. But as is often the case, the perpetrators, I know it's not a crime, but I'll use the term if I may, those responsible for it, who paid the fines, didn't have to admit any wrongdoing. So does that in any way preclude an individual client, for example, who has found out or does find out as a result of this settlement that they received care from someone who wasn't qualified to provide it? Are they in a position to seek redress, financial redress themselves?
I can't speak to that. What I can speak to, though, is going back to the settlement itself. I want to make a point that South Bay settled with the Commonwealth shortly after the Commonwealth intervened. It was brought into compliance in 2018, fortunately, as a result of Christine's lawsuit and the Commonwealth's intervention. It and CIS declared bankruptcy earlier this year. So part of what accounts for the way the settlement worked out was the provider itself declared bankruptcy and has exited bankruptcy now under different circumstances.
Do you think you buy into the notion that these kinds of settlements, particularly of this size, and this is for you, Caitlin, deter similar behavior by other similarly positioned enterprise? I have to say, and while I'm a lawyer in my former life, as a layperson, the notion that people are getting critical mental health services, particularly low-income people who don't have many other places to go, and the people who are collecting the money from the taxpayers in the state apparently didn't give a damn about the level of qualification. It's sort of stunning to me. Do you buy into the notion, and I hope you do, that the size of the settlement will deter other potential wrongdoers down the line?
I do. And I'll let Christine speak to one aspect of my response, which is that in her case, it was actually another lawsuit, a previous False Claims Act action with similar facts in the mental health field that brought to light some concerns in this space and brought whistleblowers like Christine to the forefront and empowered them to bring a case. We hope that her case will do the same. With respect to private equity companies and their involvement in healthcare, this is a very significant settlement. I mean, the ruling we got from Judge Saris in this case on summary judgment was itself groundbreaking, establishing that a private equity company can be liable for causing its portfolio company to submit false claims where it's really involved in the operations and management of that company. And so that ruling combined with this settlement really should send a message. It should empower whistleblowers, help them come forward to report this kind of fraud, and it should also cause companies to take a second look at their practices.
One last thing for you, Caitlin, before I go back to Christine. I know this may not be in your bailiwick, but I'll give it a try anyway. I've grown up with the notion that when you take money from anybody, whether it's a private individual or a government entity, through fraud, you may have committed a crime as well as being civilly liable as these people were. Could they still potentially be prosecuted here? We asked that question of the Attorney General's office during the day, and the response was this was a civil proceeding. They didn't address the possible criminality. Could there possibly be criminal charges down the line?
Is that a question for me?
It is for you. You're the lawyer in this crowd.
That's right. I can't speak to that either. I mean, we whistleblowers and their counsel, we are not, directly involved in bringing those criminal charges. That would be up to the Massachusetts Attorney General's office or the United States Attorney's office. And we have no indication that they're pursuing that type of charge here.
We'll ask them next time they're here. We only have 30 seconds left, Christine. At the end of this long road, how does it feel to know that it's your courage, frankly, that caused this outcome to happen?
Well, that's very kind. I feel very empowered. And if it's all right, I'd like to share a couple of practical tips that people can do to help themselves.
Quickly,
So
please, yeah.
a person who is in need of mental health services, ask your clinician if he or she is licensed.
Great idea.
If they can say, who is your supervisor and are you licensed? And if you're a mental health counselor, find out the licensure of your direct supervisor. I think that is so important. And if you're in a position of leadership, know the regulations. There is no excuse not to.
And if they can't do any of those things, they should just call you, Christine. Christine, congratulations. And Caitlin, congratulations to both of you. And I really look forward to talking to you again. And we look forward to talking to the Attorney General about this too. Thank you both.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.